What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single week I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the latest edition of WWE Untold, entitled How Sting Finally Debuted in WWE. If you haven't already checked them out, I've already reviewed the last 3 episodes of Untold. WWE put them on the network all at one time, about a month or so ago. They did episodes on the Mankind Undertaker Hell in a Cell match, which was really cool. Eddie Guerrero's impact on SmackDown. And then, let me see what the other one was. We also had one on the Second Coming of ECW. How could I forget? That was a good one too. So check those 3 out on the network now, as well as my reviews here on the channel on Network and Chill. But yeah, this one aired around WrestleMania weekend, like I said in my last Network and Chill video. I'm just now catching up on all the network content that aired over WrestleMania weekend, and being there, I was so fucking busy, then I got sick, so I'm just watching it now, I'm just catching up, and I'm just reviewing it, so I appreciate the patience from you guys for waiting for my reviews to be up here on the channel 2 weeks removed from when they initially aired. But yeah, WWE Untold is essentially the stories of various things and people and whatever from people in the company, of stories you may not have heard before. This really did not feature a lot of stuff that I didn't already know after hearing Sting talk about it in various interviews, and then his own documentary, which they put out by WWE themselves. They produced it a few years ago. It was still pretty good, though. It's a lot of talking head type stuff. So to kick off this special, we had Road Dogg, Scott Hall, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels all praising Sting's WrestleMania 31 performance, where he faced Triple H, which is the ultimate end goal of this documentary here. It's about 20 minutes in length, by the way. Not them talking, but the overall special. So anyway, Triple H is the first person interviewed. He talks about how he knew Sting from WCW, because obviously Triple H spent some time there before coming to WWE in the 1990s. But he never had any interaction with him. He only knew really of Sting and the greatness that was Sting and whatever, and he knew that at some point he wanted to bring Sting into WWE when he had enough power. So Sting said that he felt there was more he wanted to do in WWE. Not really more that he wanted to do, but like things that he could do in WWE during his time at Impact, which he doesn't mention here, but you know, Sting left WCW when it closed down. He was there till the day the doors closed in 2001. Then he went on to wrestle for Impact, for TNA from 2003 to 2014. So for well over a decade, Sting was in Impact. And there were opportunities, which they don't talk about here. There were different times that Sting almost came over but didn't. Whether it was a financial reason or he thought they wouldn't use him right, he just never came over. He probably should have come over a decade before he did, but better late than never. So Sting said he texted Triple H and Vince McMahon when he left TNA in early 2014 about the possibility of him coming into the company when the time was right, later on that year, around WrestleMania, whatever. I remember when Sting first left TNA, I think it was in January of 2014. It was around the same time that AJ left too. And I'm like, holy shit, those are 2 big blows in a very short span of time. But yeah, Sting left soon after. It was right before Mania 30. I was like, dude, this is fucking perfect. Has Sting debut at Mania itself or the night after. He confronts Undertaker. Boom, you got a fucking Undertaker-Sting match at WrestleMania for the following year. This shit writes itself. It didn't happen. I'm sure he texted Triple H and Vince like well before Mania, but there were no plans to bring him in at any point until like the summer at the earliest. They said that the signing the contract process was easy, so they came to a deal fairly easy, I guess, fairly easily. They talked about surprising fans at Comic-Con when that happened. I think in July or August, Sting just randomly showed up at a fucking panel to talk about, I think, WWE 2K14. I don't know if that was before or after the video game, which there was no talk of here. Which was one of the best parts of Sting coming into the company, was him being in the video game. And not just him being in the video game, but the commercial that came along with it. When they aired that commercial and you see Sting, it was like, holy shit, this was awesome. This was really, really cool. They never talked about that here. They just talked about the whole Comic-Con thing, which I think was afterward. But anyway, Sting talked about going all out for signing with WWE. He had to be in great shape, be the Sting of old. And the guy's like fucking 50 at this point. Late 50s, so he really had to work to get back in a great shape, to get back in a great shape after not wrestling for a while. Now, Triple H had mentioned, like, oh, you know, he's been out of action for so long. It's like, dude, The guy's only been wrestling, for the last 10 years since he left WCW. Now, granted, he was not wrestling consistently after he left TNA in early 2014. But still, the guy was fairly active for the better part of that, time period when he wasn't in WCW or WWE. But yeah, Sting really was not doing much, anything active in 2014. So he did have to keep at it despite not wrestling at that time because he knew at some point he probably would be wrestling for the company. He had a list of opponents he wanted to work with, and clearly at the top of that list was The Undertaker. And The Undertaker was quote-unquote unavailable, according to Triple H in this documentary. They went on to say that I think Taker was already booked to do something else at Mania 31, that being with Bray Wyatt, which was fucking bullshit. Which I know they had been building towards since late 2014. The whole purpose of that Bray Wyatt-Dean Ambrose program was to make Bray Wyatt ready for WrestleMania 31. Now, they had no intentions of making Bray Wyatt a star, of giving Bray Wyatt the victory, of doing anything of note with Bray Wyatt coming out of WrestleMania, but it was so fucking imperative, apparently, to do that match at WrestleMania, even though there were no real implications. Yeah, Bray Wyatt-Undertaker match, in theory, was cool. At that point, Taker was so far beyond what he used to be. And, it's the same thing with Sting. The match was never going to be anything special. But if you had an option to do Taker and Sting, you change plans. And you do Taker and Sting. That was your one opportunity to do the match, considering Sting had to later retire because he suffered injuries later on that year that would make that matchup impossible in WWE. Sting had a lot of creative ideas, he said, to make that match happen, to make it cool, to make it something that people would remember forever. And again, the match itself likely would have not been anything special. It likely would have been complete shit, because both guys are well past their prime, they're in their 50s. It would have been garbage, but the build could have been cool, and just the idea of the match happening would have been awesome. And he still wishes to this day that he could have had that match. He still talks about it in interviews to this day. He talked about it over Mania 35 weekend, about wanting that match with The Undertaker. It's his one regret, not facing The Undertaker. And I think it was Road Dogg here, who was the head writer of SmackDown back in 2015, who I think just recently resigned as the writer of SmackDown because he had creative differences with Vince or whatever the fuck the rumor was. He said here that Undertaker already had creative with Bray Wyatt. But again, you change plans. Was the Bray Wyatt match that important to do at WrestleMania? The answer is no, it wasn't. The match was decent. The build was completely non-existent because Taker wasn't even on TV. He didn't show up until WrestleMania itself, which would have made sense if Taker stuck around a little while after WrestleMania, but he didn't. We didn't see him again until the summer. So I thought it was such a waste to have Taker not appear on the road to WrestleMania. He shows up, beats Bray Wyatt, which is what Bray Wyatt does best, and then disappears. Had they had Taker show up in Mania, beat Bray, and then set up a Sting match the next night on Raw, that would have been sick, but they didn't do that. So again, they could have. So this whole bullshit about not doing a Sting-Taker match, because Taker was busy. He wasn't busy after WrestleMania, so why not set it up the night after WrestleMania for a match at SummerSlam? Not even Mania 32, but SummerSlam. They had something against doing the match. It wasn't like, we'll save it for next year, or we'll do it at this pay-per-view instead, or yeah, he really is booked with other opponents right now. He wasn't. They were looking for other reasons and other excuses to not do the match. And ultimately, they got their wish. The match never happened, but I just thought that was fucking bizarre. Vince does not like the idea of a Sting-Taker match for whatever reason. And even Road Dogg said, I do think that dream is better left in our dreams. Which, again, to an extent, he's probably right, because the match would have been shit. It probably would have disappointed a lot of people, but just the idea of the match is cool. The build would have been cool. Just to see them in the same place at the same time, which we have never gotten in WWE. Which, again, if they were so determined to do the match, but everyone involved was so busy, then why not have them confront each other over Mania 32 weekend when Sting got inducted into the Hall of Fame? You could have run a backstage segment where Sting encountered Undertaker backstage at the event. That's all you have to do. Sting, walking out of his Hall of Fame thing on the stage, and then Taker's getting ready for his match. That's all you had to do, but they never did it. They've never once, I'm sure they've, encountered each other backstage at some point or another, but never on TV, and that just always blew my mind. So, since Taker was unavailable, apparently Triple H was the next name on that list, because of course he would be. Why wouldn't Triple H be the next name on Sting's list of opponents to work with in WWE? So then they talk about how Triple H was already booked to face The Rock at WrestleMania, but not at WrestleMania 31. The idea was to start building it up for more than a year. I think starting at SmackDown's 15th anniversary show in late 2014, and then have it culminate at WrestleMania 32. Again, this is the first time they've actually said this in any sort of special, in an interview, whatever. But it was kind of common knowledge at the time that they were setting up a Rock and Triple H match for some point down the road. So had Triple H not faced Sting at WrestleMania 31, he likely just would have been involved in which I find very hard to believe, by the way, that they would have just done Triple H in a segment with The Rock and Ronda Rousey to set up the match for the following year. I find that very hard to believe. Triple H always has to be wrestling at every fucking WrestleMania. So I don't know if I believe that shit. But I do believe they were setting up Triple H and The Rock for WrestleMania 32. Again, they had that confrontation at WrestleMania, or rather, the SmackDown 15th anniversary show, that pre-taped segment, and then at WrestleMania 31, and the match never happened. The Rock's schedule changed, whether it was a movie, or I think there was a report at the time that his agents didn't want him getting physical, because remember, he was in action at WrestleManias 28 and 29, and both times he got hurt. So do you really blame them for wanting to play it safe with The Rock and not have him wrestle like a pretty physical match with a guy like Triple H? So he couldn't do the match at WrestleMania 32. Triple H pitched the idea for a match with Sting instead, and that's how that match came to be. Which he said, "Oh, do you want to face me instead? Taker's unavailable. Do you want to face me?" And Sting said, "Yeah, I would love to." So Sting debuted at Survivor Series 2014 after months of speculation regarding when he would show up. Vince was the one, according to Sting here, which I did not know, that sent Sting through the curtain. And that's a pretty big thing that never really usually happens. But it happened with Sting. It was a pretty big honor for Sting. He's like, oh, I feel like a big deal having the fucking founder or the head of the company, the chairman of the company, be the one to send me through the curtain. He's like, he thinks that highly of me in this debut, whatever. Road Dogg apparently had a say in how it was laid out, and how everything kind of came to be and everything else. And Triple H said it was the first time in a while that he had done anything on a major level. And it was, Sting had been in action before for the last 10 years, but before Survivor Series, he hadn't gotten physical since, earlier that year when he first left TNA. So, from Survivor Series to WrestleMania, he didn't wrestle at all. It's not like he was on the house shows. So he was fairly inactive, so Sting had to work on his own to get himself and remain in great shape in time for WrestleMania. So then Sting says there's no other pay-per-view that scratches the surface of WrestleMania. So if there's any pay-per-view to make your WWE in-ring debut at, it's at WrestleMania. So the night before WrestleMania, they don't really talk a whole lot about the build to the match or Sting's Survivor Series debut. They mentioned it briefly, like I said, with Road Dogg saying he had a say in how it was laid out and how it was perfect when, Dolph Ziggler got the rub and beating Seth, blah, blah, blah. So he's taking all the credit there. They don't really talk a whole lot about everything else that happened between November and then March. But anyway, so they talk about how the night before WrestleMania, Triple H asked Kevin Nash, who got inducted into the Hall of Fame that same night, if he wanted to get involved at WrestleMania in the Sting Triple H match. So he obviously said yes, but it wasn't just Nash. It was Scott Hall, it was X-Pac, it was the New Age Outlaws, it was Hulk Hogan, it was the whole band. It was NWO and the NWO and D-Generation X to make the match more special, I guess, according to Triple H. So Vince congratulated Sting ahead of time about, welcome to WWE, this is your big in-ring debut, enjoy it, whatever. So Sting saw that as a badge of honor. Stephanie also told him beforehand, take it all in, enjoy it for what it is. It's a big deal out there, just go out there and have fun. Sting said, these fans don't care if I was with WCW. These fans don't care if I was with TNA, which he actually did say here. He actually mentioned the words TNA, so, alert all the TNA diehards that they got to mention here on the show. But he said, these fans don't care if I was with WCW or TNA or anywhere else. They only care that I'm Sting, that I'm the Sting that they remember from years ago, or that, I'm wrestling for the first time here. I got to make a good impression in my first official WWE match. There was a bit of an entrance mishap here, I guess, with Triple H's entrance and him coming up through the smoke and all this other shit. Excuse me. Which Triple H is not a stranger to when it comes to WrestleMania entrances. It was actually at WrestleMania 29. He got the dry ice on his chest, which hurt like a fucking bitch, apparently. So that happened at 29. This happened here with the whole coming up through the stage thing. There was a bit of a mishap. It worked out fine. I had no idea there was an issue with the entrance until they mentioned it here. So they did a very good job of covering it up. So before the match, DX and NWO discuss the involvement. They talk about it while they're playing the match here on the special, how they got involved and how it came to be and who did what and getting physical and all this other shit, which I don't really care about. I mean, the match was cool, but it's like, do I really need to hear from Road Dogg and Scott Hall talking about how they took bumps during the match? Who gives a shit? I only really want to hear Sting talk about his debut and all this other stuff. We can hear from those people, but I feel like they spent way too much time on how that shit came to be with Kevin Nash and Road. Like, who cares? It was cool when they came down, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, the special should be all about Sting, not the people that got involved in Sting's match. You know, I know the relation there, but I don't care about the fucking interference. I care about Sting in the match that he had at WrestleMania. I want to hear him talk more about that. So anyway, Triple H said, or rather Shawn Michaels mentioned how after he ran in, he actually talked to Ronda Rousey at ringside, because he did the quick run-in, he helped Triple H win, and that was it. So he was kind of standing by ringside. He talked to Ronda Rousey. Triple H said that he felt like a kid watching it all. He was out at ringside at one point. He saw it all unfold in the ring from the floor, and he felt like a kid just watching it. And Sting said it all came to a crescendo. Wrestling at WrestleMania, D-Generation X, NWO, all this other shit. It felt like it was the perfect farewell for my character. And Triple H even acknowledged here that the fan criticism, he even acknowledged the fan criticism over the outcome about how he won over Sting in his first WWE match. He doesn't really say much more than that, other than then, yeah, there was some outrage over the fact that I beat Sting in his first WWE match. He doesn't really say more than that. He does say, the Rock situation made that impossible, which was very interesting. I thought that was a really interesting quote. He said, I beat Sting and people were mad, but the Rock situation made that impossible. How did they make that impossible? I don't really understand. So I was a bit lost here. I had to actually rewind this a few times. So to my understanding, based off what Triple H said here, that because Triple H, which is why they brought this up in the first place, the whole reason why Triple H could not lose to Sting was because Triple H was facing The Rock at WrestleMania 32, and he couldn't lose, God forbid he lose, before WrestleMania 32 to The Rock. If he was going to lose to The Rock, he had to win ahead of time in order to make himself look like a threat. I guess that's what they were going for here, and it's really not all that far-fetched, but at the same time, it's not like Triple H has beaten Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. It's not like he's beaten all these other people at WrestleMania. Did it really matter that Triple H won here before he faced... that's the last thing I remember people talking about, by the way, when Triple H won at WrestleMania. That is the last thing I remember people talking about back at WrestleMania 31. Sting losing sucked, but they had to keep Triple H strong. He's facing The Rock after all. They got to keep him strong for that Rock match. I don't get that mentality. I do in any other circumstance, but Triple H is Triple fucking H. It doesn't matter whether he wins or loses. People will take him seriously no matter what. The Rock match, excuse me, was a fucking attraction. That's all it was. It wasn't for the WWE title. It wasn't supposed to be the main event. So who cares if Triple H lost to Sting? I don't quite get that. Sting defends the outcome. He says the post-match is what people remember with me hugging Triple H, which made even less sense, but whatever. He said that, or not him, but Road Dogg said that the plans going forward never happened. So in retrospect, he actually wishes that things had been a bit different, that things played out differently than they did, essentially implying that Sting should have won here because the Rock Triple H match never happened. So there's regret over Triple H beating Sting in his in-ring debut for WWE. Sting says it ended perfectly. I didn't mind it. Whatever. I don't know if he feels that way in real life or if he was just bullshitting for the cameras. I'm not sure. But the outcome 4 years later still makes no sense to me the same way that it did 4 years ago. But whatever. Triple H says we let them be a part of what's real to us. Talking about the fans being a part of it. Whatever. Kevin Nash says he finally got that recognition to be a WWE superstar. Well, fuck off with that shit. Fuck off. I know what he means, but it felt weird just hearing him say it. He meant it from a good place. It came from a good place, but he knows what it's like to be that WWE guy now. Like, good for you for finally making it to the big time. I thought it was a weird quote. It makes it feel like he's patronizing fucking Sting here, so I thought that was weird. And then Road Dogg said, I enjoyed reuniting with Sting. It was cool. And then Sting says, I did it. I'm here. I'm finally in WWE. And that was it. I thought it was a good note to end on. Again, a lot of stuff I thought was stupid in retrospect, which it wasn't the issue with the special, just the situation with Sting losing. I still, to this day, think it's fucking dumb that Triple H beat Sting in Sting's first ever WWE match. Whatever. Regardless of what the circumstances were with Triple H facing The Rock the following year, fuck off. Who cares? The actual special itself I thought was good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually got to meet Sting over WrestleMania weekend, like the same day this aired. So that was cool, watching this back and reliving his debut, which is still one of the best debuts in recent memory. I thought it was an awesome moment, one of my favorite arrivals in recent WWE history. So I liked it a lot. I'm a Sting fan. Again, there's not a lot of things in this special that you didn't already know. It was cool to hear things said, like officially for the first time, like the whole Triple H Rock thing. I've never heard Triple H talk about that in a public forum before, in specials and interviews, so it was cool to hear it laid out. It was interesting to hear their defense of the outcome of that match, of Sting versus Triple H. Other than that, though, it was a pretty paint-by-number special. It was nothing like, must-see, you have to check it out. It's not that by any means, but I did like it. It's well worth, like, the 20 minutes. It's not an hour. It's not like the Chronicles or even the Table for Threes. It's around the same length, but it's nothing like, like this again, like it's way too long. The Untolds are cool. I liked this. It was from a different perspective than what I was expecting, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. My only real complaint was that there was not more talk of Sting's WWE debut. They talked about how it came about, which was interesting, and all the Undertaker thing, which you kind of had to acknowledge. And they talked about Sting's WrestleMania debut, but they didn't talk about the debut itself that much, which was weird because that's what I thought this whole special was about. But nonetheless, I liked it. Be sure to check it out on the WWE Network. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll be back in the coming days with more network and show videos, including reviews of WWE Chronicle, Roman Reigns Part 2, and then also Table for 3, the Independent Spirit episode, featuring Johnny Gargano, Ricochet, and Adam Cole, baby. So until then, guys, have a great rest of your weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.